And welcome to Market of Influence, where I talk to influential people about influential things. Today, Matt Prince, head of PR at Taco Bell. Let's do it. Matt Prince, the Prince of PR, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Matt, what exactly do you do in Taco Bell?
So I work for Taco Bell as head of public relations and brand communications. I've been with the brand for a little over 10 years. So all of that time has been within communications or brand communications of some sort. And my job is really to keep the brand top of mind for consumers, to talk about all the amazing things that we're doing, from the partnerships to the food launches, to the collabs, all the cool stuff that we get to do day in and day out as a really fun brand and keep our brand culturally relevant and top of mind for the next generation of consumers.
That's awesome. So, Matt, when people think about Taco Bell, they think about a couple of like high school kids coming out of a party, 2 a.m. in the morning, 1 a.m. in the morning, getting a chalupa. Who is Taco Bell's core audience?
Yeah, I mean, I hear that a lot. Obviously, whenever I tell somebody I work for Taco Bell, they always give me their story of like, oh man, I remember, Taco Bell was the place we would go to, XYZ. And those are amazing stories. And I think the role that we play in a lot of people's lives is a very nostalgic brand. A lot of people, some have a tendency to outgrow the brand. And I think the job for us, as marketers, as communicators, is to kind of figure out, okay, how do we grow with our core consumer and to make sure that people don't outgrow us? And so I think when you look at who our consumer is, it's literally everyone. When you look at the demographics, of who we're appealing to, everybody from childhood to senior citizens are coming to Taco Bell to a certain extent. So it makes it hard from a demographic standpoint to say, okay, who should we really go after? But what we've done is we've kind of target our core consumer and who we're speaking to as what we call like an aspirational kind of target. So by being really specific on who we're talking to, ideally you have someone within the early 20s or mid 20s. It's a very aspirational demographic. So you have people who are younger who are aspiring to be in that range. You have people who are older who are aspiring to be in that range. So by getting really focused on who we are as a brand, we're able to appeal to a broad market because we're not going to be able to have communications that appeal to every single different demographic out there. So we found really a nice sweet spot that allows us to focus our energy, but appeal to broad markets, which is really great. But who our core consumer is from like kind of a tone perspective is what we call a cultural rebel. It's not someone that specifically has to be Gen Z, but Gen Z is a part of that core set. And it's someone who kind of bucks the trends and kind of stands out in a unique way, similar to where we are as a brand as well. And that goes all the way back to where we started as a brand back in 1962 and kind of being this taco mentality in a burger world. And we've carried that kind of mindset throughout the 62 years that we've been around. And you see that, I think, in our work today and kind of doing things different and not going to the trends that a lot of people do.
So, Matt, what's your message as Taco Bell to these cultural rebels?
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to support people and be there for people when they need us. I think for a lot of times early on, in the marketing kind of timeline of Taco Bell, we were for millennials like fuel. It was very much the mindset of it's just food as fuel, and you needed something to eat. You wanted to stop by someplace that you knew would be good and it would be, inexpensive, and you could do your thing and keep moving. And then somewhere along the lines, food really became, and this was probably around the time of social media and how it continued to grow, food became an experience, right? Restaurants became an experience. And I think around that time, that mindset of the brand shifted from how do we go from just fuel and just kind of something that people are, haphazardly thinking about to be part of their lives to like purpose-driven decisions to for us and brand love and growing that brand love. And so it's been a really great journey over the past 10 years that I've been there, certainly, and kind of evolving with social, evolving with the next generation to match the consumer behavior. I think a lot of what we do is reflective of who our consumer is. And I think that's one of the things we do really well is if you have what we say this aspirational of 25 years old, for example, the 25-year-old of my time is very different than the 25-year-old of today, right? But we were a brand that was there for me when I was 25, just the same way we are a brand for somebody who is 25 today. even though it's totally different. And it keeps us flexible, it keeps us adapting, it keeps us evolving with culture, with the generation. And I think we do that really well. And I think that's why you see us standing out and doing unique things that maybe others in the industry or even outside the industry aren't doing. And that's probably one of the funnest things about working for a brand like Taco Bell.
That's awesome. Do you have an example of a recent campaign that would reflect everything you just spoke about?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's tons. Obviously, I think we work really closely with creators and influencers. As you know, I mean, it's just such a great tool to tap into existing audiences for people who really have a connection to certain communities. And one we recently did was with a 22-year-old creator, Ashley Zhu, and she is amazing. Creator on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, and she's known for making these really great food spots. And we reached out to her and we're like, hey, instead of using the typical, producer director that we would for these big advertising spots, going to big directors, we would love to work with a creator and not just for social work. We want to work with somebody for actual advertising work that would show up on TV, on digital, on across social. And so we worked with a creator to direct and produce that spot. And not only was it, just a really cool and different way to approach content, but it was effective, in more ways than one. You were leaning into somebody whose talent was in food, photography, and video, was connected to a generation in a much different way, and allowed us to really look at the way working with creators differently, right? It wasn't just a minute, social spot that would show up on TikTok. This was a straight up advertisement that was going across the board. So just things like that, I think, are fun to do, and just reflect again the changing demographic of and it's fun. Like I said, and the effectiveness of that advertising was far more, effective than what we see a lot of times with these big budget productions that are working with big time producers. So it's really cool to see.
Isn't this kind of reflective of the big disruption of the creator economy, right? For so many years, brands would, hire a large advertising company and would throw these huge production budgets to create the ads that we all grew up watching on television. Nowadays, you have the alternative of just partnering with amazing creators who are already creating this content anyways, and just empowering them and giving them a voice. So you've been in this game for a long time. Do you see this really becoming a trend that will disrupt advertising for years to come?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't even think trend is, appropriate anymore. I think it's just the new way of doing business for a lot of brands, and consumers are really driving that shift 100%, and primarily Gen Z. I mean, you think of how they're engaging with brands, the types of brands they're engaging with. They want to give their attention and their purchasing power to brands that they know they can support and who reflect their lifestyle, who reflect their beliefs. And it's forced brands to be more accountable and more transparent with where they are as a brand, which I think is fantastic. But it's shifted the way that media and content is created. And I think for a long time we've been really, really purposeful and bullish on understanding that our brand is much more powerful in the hands of our fans. We don't own the brand, full stop. The brand is owned by the consumers. And when we're able to show up in ways that are authentic and genuine to that core consumer, it's going to be far more effective. And especially Gen Z, but I think all generations now are just allergic to this really polished advertising that the instant it shows up in your feed or the instant it shows up somewhere, I mean, it's just an automatic tune out or swipe up to get through it as quickly as possible. But if you're able to show up through a creator, through influencers, through unique avenues that allow you to kind of showcase the brand in different and authentic ways, like that's going to be so much more effective. And so, yeah, I think it'll continue to grow, and I'm excited to see where it goes. It's to me the most exciting thing about what we do. It's you're forced to continuing to adapt year over year because everything is so fast moving and so quick changing. If you don't, like you're dead in the water, So I think the brands that are going to do really well are going to be the ones that reflect the consumer, and those consumers are changing every year. And to me, that's exciting. So I love to see where it's going.
Absolutely. And we talk about authenticity. Any thoughts on the difference between working with, and I'm sure you worked with all of them, the nano and micro influencers versus the more, celebrity influencers. Any thoughts on that from your experience?
Yeah, I think the democratization of social has been really cool to see. So, we worked with someone like a Doja Cat who clearly has millions and millions of followers, and that reach is going to be strong. But equally as important, we've worked with creators that are huge fans of the brands that have a couple thousand fans, and you have the potential for equal amount of reach, based on how the community is engaging with it, based on just the value and of viral content. That to me is amazing, and I think we see that all the time. Like we're never going to stop working with the big brand, like the big partners, the Doja Cats, the LeBron James. Like those are always going to be really really great partners for us. But I think more exciting and what we're seeing is just the value of those smaller communities because they're more engaged, obviously, and they're more I think what we've seen for a lot of our consumers is they're no longer lumped into these large buckets of I like, basketball, for example. Yeah, you probably like basketball, but you probably like a specific team or you like a specific player or you like a specific genre of play. Like there's so many different categories of subcultures of these places that it's really segmented a lot of where consumers are. It makes our job harder as a brand because if our job is to show up in a For You page of our consumers, and if you look at everyone's For You page, it's completely different. That makes it difficult, of how and where you show up. So we have to be really strategic about who we work with, and I think long gone are the days of these massive campaigns that appeal to everybody. You're forced to do more smaller campaigns that are going to just cover your bases and appeal to smaller communities and smaller groups of people, but you just have to do more of them to reach as many as you can.
And that's where influencers really come in, right? They allow you to build that bridge between the brand and the community, right? So influencer relations is becoming a much more prominent function in the PR space. Would you agree with that?
For sure, 100%. I think we look at earned media, kind of as a blanket umbrella that covers off on just how we're showing up in the news. And that could be at the dot coms, that could be in newspapers, but primarily now it's social, right? If you look at how Gen Z specifically is getting their news, they're not going to the news is coming to them, and it's coming to them in their For You page, and it's coming from people who they probably don't even follow, in a lot of situations. Maybe they search for a certain term or they're seeing the same stuff that kind of are falling into their algorithm, but that makes it a lot more difficult for a brand to show up or to showcase the news. And I think what we've done is we've started to use creators and influencers the same way that we used journalists. And so if you look at our media list, it's a mixture of journalists at big, of course, media companies, but it's also creators that we know are brand fans or have talked about the brand or are within communities that we want to make sure that we're resonating with. And I think that's really cool. It reminds me a lot of when I want to say maybe like 15 years ago, bloggers were really getting started and not getting started, but really getting noticed in the space as a tool. And a lot of people are like, bloggers, I mean, they're just these small little websites. No one's looking at these things. But in reality, they were just driving a lot of awareness for these communities. And they became, news organizations in and of themselves. And so we're looking at it the same way. Like, how do you add those creators, those influencers to those media lists and give them the same access and opportunities to showcase what the brand is working on? I think it shifts a little bit of how we ensure that the accuracy is there because it's just a little bit more of a slippery slope. When you think of social coverage and things like that. But that's why we want to invite people in and give them the same access. That way they have the information. It's more accurate. It gets out there, and it's been really cool to watch that grow.
Absolutely. And I've seen from my own research that a lot of journalists are now depending on influencers to be their sources as well. So this is where, the analysts, the B2B influencers, the consumer-faced influencers are becoming really important players in the media landscape. All right, Matt, we cannot talk about brand love and the people owning the brand and not the brand itself owning it, right? Without talking about my favorite video of 2024. We're going to show it, and I want your response.
I'm not impressed. It gives it a weird flavor, like a Cheez-It.
Why don't they just stick to the basics and bring back the Mexi Melt instead of trying to invent all this bullshit?
Taco Bell, I know you're watching. Okay, Taco Bell CEO, I know you're watching us. Listen to her. Okay?
They're sitting up in their mansions eating caviar and everything, not knowing what the people want. The people want a Mexi Melt.
They're up there in their giant 5,000 square foot mansion saying, oh, these people are trash. Let's just throw a Cheez-It in a Gordita Crunch and they'll like it. We won't. Bring back the Mexi Melts.
All right, Matt. Awesome video. Beyond the entertainment value, what do we need to learn from this?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting example for a couple reasons. One, these are, a couple of comedians that do a lot of, kind of like shtick and work. And one, it's hilarious. I think it's really funny. And I think it goes to show how you don't control the brand in a lot of situations. And while this was probably very staged for them to build out, it came across as very authentic. And probably 99% of the people on social who don't follow these comedians specifically looked at it as real content that these people are somewhere in middle America and really passionate about a product and are, pushing on a brand to bring something back. And I think it's just really cool to see how then we as a brand can react in real time or not react in real time based on all sorts of things, audiences and accuracy, or if we have the ability to bring a product back. Thankfully for us, we were actually bringing this product back soon after this content came out. And so we were able to do some fun stuff. And I think they had a couple more videos coming out too of the product actually coming back, which is really cool. But it represented this really big, passionate fan base of our brand that a lot of people can relate with, right? That everyone has this product that they want to come back from us. And it's a passion that is driven by love for the brand, but it can very easily kind of go to a place of negativity, right? Where people are just like demanding something and the brand or any brand is not reacting in a positive way to, or being able to answer those questions. We did this really similarly with Doja Cat, with the Mexican pizza return, where we removed a product. We had no plans of bringing that product back, the Mexican pizza. And there was just a social uproar of it going away. And the biggest advocate for pushing the brand was Doja Cat, right? And so when Doja Cat speaks, it usually catches the attention of a lot of consumers. And it caught our attention, and we worked with her to build out this really fun campaign over the course of a year to not take away her anger that this product was back, but to actually lean into it because that's what the consumer was talking about. That's how they were thinking of it. It wasn't this positive sunshines and rainbows all the time. Like they were actually upset that things go away. And I think when you're able to lean into that authenticity, good things happen. Like we didn't want to change Doja Cat from being Doja Cat. She's very outspoken. She's this anti-hero in this situation. And that became the thematic, tone over the course of this year. And it was amazing because you brought this product back. People who loved the product got to get it back. And also it introduced this product to a brand new generation, of people who either follow Doja Cat or, the conversations kind of rose to the place that they typically weren't, seeing things. And so it was exposed to a brand new generation, which is amazing. And so we've brought it back and have sold way more Mexican pizzas now than we ever have historically, which is cool.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Bring back the McRib, McDonald's. So Matt, I mean, how do people do this work before social listening, right? You have the aquarium, is it in Southern California? Your data.
Fishbowl, close.
Yeah,
Yeah, fishbowl.
fishbowl, right? Can you talk about the fishbowl and how you all use analytics? I mean, I think you just gave an example, but how important are social media analytics and social media listening these days?
Yeah, I mean, to me, social media listening and listening in general is the most powerful thing you can do, I think, as a brand. And again, if you look at all the examples that we have, these campaigns that are really successful, the one thing that they have in common is that they were, inspired by actual consumer behavior, right? We're not making things up. And I think that's why we have this really strong resonance with our consumers. It's inspired by them. And an example of this is if you look at Taco Bell weddings, right? For a lot of people may not know, you can actually get married at a Taco Bell in Las Vegas. And, that was inspired by what we were seeing in social. And it's really cool to look at it. So if you think about the types of social posts that were popping up, and this was, a few years ago, people were getting proposed to with sauce packets, right? Because their sauce packets have these fun sayings on them. People were actually using them to propose. You're like, and you see that in social, you're like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. Don't really know exactly what to do with that, but I'm going to put that in my back pocket and I'm going to think about it. And then you kind of move forward and you see people are starting to, take their wedding photos at Taco Bell. So you're like, oh, that's really amazing. That's inspiring. That's awesome. You take that, you don't really know entirely what to do with it just yet, but you put it in your back pocket. And then you see that people are catering weddings with Taco Bells or after parties with Taco Bells. And you're like, okay, three of these types of examples within kind of this world of love and relationships is it's leaning into an actual insight, and the insight was Taco Bell plays a really important role in the love stories of our biggest fans. And then if you take that insight, like our job as marketers and communicators is to just flip it on its head and figure out how to way to amplify it, make it bigger and make it better. And at the time we were opening up a restaurant in Vegas, and I'm like, this is perfect, right? Let's use this as a catalyst to build out this, the literally the best example of brand love you can, and allow people to get married. And that was about 7 years ago. And I think since then we've done almost 2,000 weddings, in Las Vegas. And again, you think about people who are so committed to the brand that they are arguably making one of the biggest days of their lives tied to our brand in a really special way. But again, that type of idea, those ideas are driven by consumer behavior, not us just making stuff up. And I think that's why it drives a lot of that connectivity.
So social listening kicked out Elvis and replaced it with a Taco Bell wedding chapel. I love it. Maybe I'll have my nephew think about that for his wedding.
Yeah.
Very
It
cool.
is one of those, social listening is one of those things too that we don't have unique access to certain data. Everyone has access to the same data through social. And so social listening on its own is not the thing that makes you a better brand or better, in social or PR or marketing. I think what makes you better is what you do, obviously, with that information. And we're structured in a way that, the social teams and PR teams are so integrated that you don't even know where one of the teams ends and the other begins. And I think that's really the secret to moving as quickly as possible. And when these things do pop up, you're not just waiting around, or it's not floating around in this, big corporate red tape ether, but you're able to move as quickly as possible. We have the autonomy to do so, and that helps us. And I don't think a lot of brands have, that ability, but you could, right? You just have to set yourself up for success. And again, everyone has access to the same information. It's what you do with it that obviously matters.
Yeah, finding those insights and taking action. Awesome. And I wouldn't expect anything less from Taco Bell. Matt, I've been a big fan of your work for a long time, but if there is one thing I think most people don't realize about you is that you're not only a Taco Bell PR guy, you also teach at the university because you love education and you love PR and you want to build the next generation of thinkers. And in addition, you created a really, really cool mentor program. Was it 4 or 5 years ago? I remember bringing it to my classroom 4 or 5 years ago. It was originally called NetNet Synergy. Now it's rebranded as For You Path. Can you talk about For You Path, why you started it, and what should people know about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Mentorship is a huge passion of mine. That's why I got into teaching. It's just such an amazing opportunity to connect with the next generation of industry leaders, and so I've absolutely loved it. And For You Path started during the pandemic, and it was really driven out of the challenge that I see a lot of young professionals dealing with, which is connecting with people in the industry. And that's always been hard. But I think the pandemic obviously made it a whole lot harder. And so I wanted to build out some sort of support or resource that would allow students and young professionals to access people and things that could just help them grow in their careers. And I think that was driven a lot by my career journey. And I was really early on recognizing that I'm not going to be the smartest person in the room, and I need to lean into relationships in so many ways. And that's what's driven my career growth, was being that person that came up in those conversations of like, hey, who do you think is going to be great for this role? And you have to do the best of your ability through your networking, through your relationships, to be at the top of that list, right? And so in order to do that, you have to put yourself strategically in front of the people and places that inspire you. And I wanted to build out a platform that would allow, students to do that. So students can go in there, look at the mentorship directory. There's over 200, virtual mentors that are in there of all different industries across the way. So if you want to get into sports, you can filter out into sports people, reach out to those folks and do informational interviews. And these are all professionals that have raised their hands saying, like, I want to be there. Like, I want to support the next generation of leaders. And I think that's a lot of times the most intimidating part for students is, who do I reach out to? How do I know if they have the time? And so this is kind of taking out that work and saying, all these people are here for you. They will say that they're gonna, say yes to your outreach, and relationships grow from that, and opportunities grow from that. And I think, great things happen when that comes together. And then the best thing about mentorship is it's so cyclical. You have a lot of these people that I mentored, 15 years ago, who are now mentors on this page. And I think it just continues to evolve and continues to grow. And that's one of the best things about, I think, mentorship and supporting others in our industry. So yeah, it's amazingly, it's grown over the years. It's amazing to see, and super passionate about it.
Awesome. Matt Prince, the Prince of PR, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Guy. Appreciate it.